changes in global energy and the impact on the region. Maybe the impact on the region we can discuss later in more detail, given the time available. First of all, energy is either the reason or the pretext of many conflicts, but also opportunities for cooperation in the region. And for example, in the East Med right now, we have both conflicts as well as opportunities for cooperation that have been brought in because of oil and gas. But even though the region is blessed with many resources, it is affected by technology needs, by markets and prices, and these are not under the control of the region. These are under the control of global markets, global factors, which we need to understand as the point of addressing energy security in the region. Often, when we talk about energy in the region, we ignore what is happening outside. And yet what is happening outside dictates what is happening here. And we need to understand that. If we don't understand it, then we go in the wrong direction. As Malek said, the world is going through a major and permanent transition from high carbon to low carbon energy, with a relentless increase in the use of renewables at the expense of fossil fuels. And these factors impact global oil and gas markets and prices, and that's what I will be talking about. And there are major implications for the East Med and the Middle East in terms of oil and gas developments. So first of all, let's look at some general things. So the changes to the global energy market because of the inroads of renewables, but also another factor called energy efficiency. Energy efficiency is a big factor. For example, in Europe, the target is to achieve energy efficiency of about 30% by 2030. That means by 2030, in comparison to 2005, Europe targets to be using 30% less energy. That's a big number, and it has an equally strong impact on the use of energy. These changes are permanent, are structural. So we're not going to have cycles of prices going up and down and then up again. We're now having, on average, in the longer term, prices going down. And that is caused partly by the Paris Agreement that Malek talked about. Limiting carbon emissions and increasing energy efficiency and the use of increasingly cheaper renewables are also having a massive impact on the global energy mix. Now, as a result of that, the world is ending up with too much energy, and this is what is leading to low prices. In November, for example, a solar PV project was down to 1.77 US cents per kilowatt hour at an auction in Mexico. 1.77 cents. It's almost nothing. And in Germany, an auction for wind energy produced 2.2 cents per kilowatt hours. Very cheap. And Malek talked about the world's biggest storage battery in Australia. Elon Musk has just announced that he's in the process of building another one 8 times bigger. So batteries are coming, combined with wind, and especially solar power. They will have an impact on the use of gas in electricity generation. In fact, right now, the world 25% of electricity generation comes from renewable resources. And that is going to increase more and more. And electricity generation will comprise about 40% of global energy by 2040. And a substantial chunk of it will come from renewables. But that doesn't mean that fossil fuels will go away, because we have other needs as well, like heavy transport, aviation, industry, petrochemicals. All of these things still need fossil fuels. So there is going to be a balance between all of these. But the upshot, though, is that we've got too much of everything. And the outcome of too much of everything is low prices. Another factor is, and I will talk about, is the United States shale, oil and gas, that is impacting the markets in a massive way, and I will explain why. Also, what is happening in China is a big factor. China now consumes a quarter of the world's energy. If China sneezes, the world catches a cold. If China's industry increases, then it absorbs a lot more energy and takes prices further up. So it's a big factor. What happens in China is critical to the rest of the world. The world now not only has too much of all of these things, it has too much gas and too much LNG, which is impacting the East Med. So let's talk briefly about the renewables. As I said, electricity will be the main form of energy by 2040. New records achieved by renewable energy, which accounted for 2/3 of all global net electricity capacity growth in 2016, and is expected to increase further with time. The contribution from renewables to global electricity generation has already surpassed that from natural gas. There is now more electricity being generated by renewables than natural gas, and that is going in the wrong direction for gas continuously. The contribution from fossil fuels to electricity generation growth is declining rapidly, while the contribution from renewables is increasing dramatically. And coal is not going away. We hear often in the West, especially in Europe, that we're getting rid of coal. Well, Europe might, but not India, not China. Both countries rely heavily on coal. Europe's impact on coal usage is small. About 80% of the coal used in the world is used by China and India, not Europe. So it's whatever happens in Europe is good, but it doesn't mean that coal is going away. And we have to bear that in mind, because coal is also very cheap. For example, in 2016, I don't have the latest numbers, on an equal footing per unit, the cost of coal was half of that of gas. And you can see that that matters, price matters. So it won't go away, and it poses more challenges to gas. And then there is United States shale oil and shale gas, and you all know that shale oil has already had massive impact on prices. Every time prices go up, the Americans produce more shale oil and prices come down and so on. And the shale oil is providing a cap to the price of oil. So basically, shale oil becomes financially viable when prices exceed $50 to $60, and it becomes a bit more tricky when prices go down. So every time prices go up, they produce more, and every time prices go down, they slow down, and then prices go up again, and so on. Something similar is going to happen with gas. A lot of the gas being produced in North America, in the United States, is associated gas. It's gas that comes out with oil. And because the cost of production is covered by oil, and gas needs to be got rid of, because if you don't get rid of it, you cannot produce the oil, it's a problem. Gas is a problem. They need to get rid of it. And it costs nothing. So the Americans have plenty of gas to export now, probably as LNG, mostly in Asia, that is costing nothing. So they will influence the global LNG markets in a big way. And in the meanwhile, with OPEC and Russia continuing to hold back on oil production, United States oil exports are surging, impacting the global prices. I mean, prices are going up. They're also going up simply because of perception that the sanctions on Iran may be reimposed by Trump. But all these are temporary factors. The fact is that the oil price is not going to grow massively. So the implications on global markets and prices is that there is a fast-changing global energy landscape. And BP and the International Energy Agency, who produce long-term outlooks, forecasts, tell us that not all discovered hydrocarbons will be consumed even by 2050. And I had colleagues not that long ago in an international conference, instead of congratulating me about our gas finds in the East Med, they come and commiserate with me because they say, well, sorry, Charles, but you will never get anything out of it. You will never be able to sell that gas. It's too expensive to produce, and it cannot compete in global markets. And that is one of the issues that is affecting this region. This availability of too much energy, too much oil, too much gas, too much coal, and renewables means that there will be strong competition between producers of oil and gas to capture a more limited market. As a result, mostly cheaper resources will be able to be developed and compete, mainly in the Middle East, US, and Russia. Others will struggle unless they can also match low prices. In this context, newly discovered gas fields in the East Med will struggle to secure export markets due to high production and export costs. Low-cost producers will use their competitive advantage to increase their share relative to higher-cost producers, as Gazprom is now doing in Europe. Gazprom is controlling the price of gas in Europe to the extent that American LNG, which is cheaper than East Med LNG, is struggling to find markets in Europe. Gazprom is keeping prices in Europe, I'm talking about spot prices, at about $6. American LNG cannot get in cheaper than $6.5 to $7 and make money. If it goes below that, it can't make any money, and it's struggling. The Russians just take it far enough, take the price far enough to keep the Americans out. The same impact applies to the East Med gas, and this is where our big challenge is going to be. But Egypt will be able to export LNG to Europe because it has 2 LNG plants which have already been paid for. So the cost of liquefaction from these 2 LNG plants is low, and that LNG can compete in Europe's. Limited capacity, though. Up to when the capacity is filled, what about the rest of the gas from Cyprus and Israel? That will struggle. And we have been observing all these low prices since 2014, and they will stay low. These are the main reasons, basically, that we need to understand and affect oil and gas production in the East Med and in the Middle East. And obviously, there is a huge opening for the use of renewables, about which others will talk in a few minutes, but it's a big factor that we, in this region, in this part of the world, need to take into account. Thank you.